We ensure that everybody receives training on gender issues. That was a training provided by the ILO. And also we have a gender focal point who needs to work with the operational sections to make sure that whenever new programs are being identified or formulated, that the gender dimension is really taken on board.
In Morocco we have basically a three-pronged approach. We have a policy dialogue on gender, we have also budget support to a gender plan of the government. We do mainstreaming, we mainstream gender into the operations we finance, and we have gender-specific projects which try to tackle issues where particularly focused on women.
Another direction is the gender diplomacy. This is becoming a must in all our external representation and activities with member states, with the government, with other development partners, with the international community and the local society at large. I'm very proud of Boge project, we call it, because of the implemented a doctor coming from the Ethiopia diaspora trained in Europe. Dr. Boge is a champion for us, is a heroine, I should say, because she is responsible for, in a great part, a great chunk of the country in central Ethiopia, for eradicating female genital mutilation. She's done that with very, very little means, starting with nothing almost. Little by little, she's been able to collect and to gather a group of very motivated people, which has now an influence on government decision makers, and of course on international community and the donor community. Our mainstreaming is interesting. You know, we are a wholesaler to a certain extent, and most of our actions are not beautiful projects like Dr. Boge's one, but big agreements with the government. So that's where we have an influence, and that's where we can make things change little by little.
Morocco has a very ambitious agenda in terms of respecting human rights and women's rights and children's rights. So it's relatively easy to work in Morocco on the government agenda, supporting the implementation of this agenda through the budget support, through indicators, but also disaggregating all the indicators we have in budget support, evaluating both the impact on men and women, so having indicators that reflect impact on women in particular, helps a lot in having a more gender-focused budget support programs, which is our main instrument in Morocco.
We want to make sure that people use less charcoal, less wood for fuel, for cooking purposes, because that has a gender impact. But we need to identify now through studies that exist to see to what extent that link that we assume is there between an increased electricity use and a reduced use of wood for cooking effectively exists. So while we're in the process of drawing up the program, we will look at those aspects, and the gender focal point plays a role in looking at the research that already exists.
It evaporates across the formulation process from programming down to projects, probably because we don't pay enough attention to it. We don't pay enough explicit attention. I think there is some sort of assumption that expects that gender, now, well, everybody knows about it, so it will translate into operation at the end. But if you do not place a deliberate act, if you don't deliberately have a gender expert in a team of experts identifying a project, or if you don't have explicit gender-focused indicators in your budget support programs, it does evaporate.
One reason is that not everybody still believes in the need to incorporate gender as an issue in programs, and I think that leads me to the second reason. Because I think it's difficult. It's difficult when you look at a road construction program to identify what is the gender dimension, how do you develop that, how do you build that into the program?
Sometimes it's a question of motivation for our own staff. Both male and female, let's not make differences there. Gender is not introduced in our careers as as a marker, something that we have to incorporate in our results, in our output, in our success stories, etc. We are not assessed or appraised because of integrating gender in our program of cooperation or making a difference. Therefore, it's very difficult when you are in a competitive organization. You have to compete for jobs, you have to do well and try to get a better one next time, etc., etc. And you have factors that might be important, but are not incorporated mainstream in the career prospects for staff. It's very difficult to get that motivation that makes the difference.